Because they want to be in her shoes.
Oh, certainly, certainly. It's exciting to watch the development of these young prodigies and how far they're going to go. It's always guesswork to see how far they go into chess and what life will bring them. I had brought the game between Seirawan and Anna Zatansky up on my screen because I was very curious to see how they got into this particular position. Maurice pegged it accurately. This was a tepid play by White, trading all of the pieces. I'm guessing that Seirawan wasn't familiar with the subtleties of this particular line of the French. Black equalized comfortably after knight c6, and now White's move bishop a6. This was a nice move. A very important tactic because, first of all, if we go back a second, I mean, White's not developed.
That's right.
And if you allow Black knight takes e5 and say after move like f takes e5, this bishop on b7, raining down against the g2 pawn is going to tie White's pieces up to its defense. So this move, bishop a6, developing with a gain of tempo, was a very clever...
Yeah, that's right. And something like bishop d3, maybe knight b4 could be a little bit annoying.
Also, you don't really want to leave the knight on e5 either, do you?
Yeah, so maybe bishop d3 was a possibility as well. But this move, what you're trying to say is that now forcing bishop a6 and...
Knight takes c6, and Anna didn't like this position because her rook actually has an awkward decision to make. One of the things is that if you play a move, just put it down because I always love these knight forks. Rook d7, oops, the knight attacks from behind, forking rook and bishop. So Anna decided to play the move bishop a8, and then that meant that White was able to develop with a gain of tempo. And then rook g1, knight takes e5, queen takes e5, I believe was played. And now Anna, as Maurice was pointing out, queen takes e5, f takes e, you would normally want to capture that, but then rook d5 could get you into trouble after this c2, c4. So a move like king f8, preparing king e7, and we're going to, well, we are in an ending, and we're going to see if Black can use her kingside majority, whereas White's queenside majority for the moment is dormant. So still, I would say Anna, slight advantage.
Yeah, because we still can't really move our rook because of the g2 pawn, so probably Seirawan will want to advance that pawn on g2.
Yeah, it's not so simple though, because after the move g2, g3, the rook d5 comes with a double attack. First, obviously, we want to pick up this key central unit, but also rook a5 could force your bishop.
What do you think about rook d1?
Rook David 1. Well, that makes so much sense, doesn't it? I apologize.
I mean, Black's not going to have a lot of winning chances here, right?
Not in this bishop ending, no.
She wants to keep rooks on the board because she saw that Seirawan not so comfortable in the endgame, we could point out from yesterday. So if she can find a position where she has a small edge, I think the practical edge will be great, but she can't trade rook. So maybe if she can't find a line where she can maintain some activity with rooks on the board, I think it's going to be harder for her to squeeze something out of this, don't you think?
Especially if White is able to play rook d1, and you can't meet this move with rook c8, you know, like you're prepared to give up the d file so you can get play on the c file, but of course c8 is covered by the bishop. So, and a rook trade going into a straight heads-up bishop ending, that looks really drawn. I don't see any...
Unless you could get your king to like d4 or d5, but White's got plenty of tempi to
stop
her
that
own
too.
king.
Exactly.
So yeah, this will be a challenge for the four-time champion to try to squeeze some juice out of this. And we've got Maurice with something for us in another game over in the championship.
Indeed, we saw Akobian really show his stuff yesterday against Gurev, winning a game that a lot of us thought he was going to lose. After drawing 4 games in a row, he won this game against Gurev to bring himself back into contention in the championship, and it looks like he is well on his way to potentially winning yet another game against Ramirez. If you look at this opening with white, it looked like he might have been in some danger having giving up a pawn. He was willing to play a little bit loose in this position, giving up this pawn and maybe at some point being able to play the move b5. Yaz, I know you like that idea, but Ramirez didn't go for it at all. He played knight f6, attacking this pawn, and after queen c2 defended it, he played the move c5, which is a completely different approach. And after d takes c5, queen to a5, Akobian said, okay, now I'm back. I haven't lost anything at all. You're the one who has to get material back. Queen takes e5, bishop to d3, and now this move, knight b to d7, bringing the knight out, maybe potentially going to e5. I'm not sure about this move, and this one is going to cost him because after castles a6, look at this, queen to e2, sacrificing a pawn again, saying if you want it, take it. I dare you. In this situation, bishop takes on c3, b takes on c3, queen takes on c3 was definitely playable, but highly dangerous. A couple of moves here, bishop to a3 is possible, even bishop to d2, starting to take pot shots at that queen. The queen has to go back on the c file. Another rook will show up, and this dark square bishop is turning into a monster. Could end up on b4, preventing the king from castling. That would have been a problem. So instead of doing that, Ramirez decided to play the move e5. He didn't want to see this pawn advance either. But guess what? Akobian pounced. He played the move knight a2, wanting that bishop. He understands the dark square weakness in the position. For example, the move bishop back to a5 could have been played, but he would have insisted with the move b4. Come on, give me that bishop. It's all I want so that I can keep your queen. First of all, attack your queen and keep your king locked in the center of the board. Here, believe it or not, even though he's not winning a piece anytime soon, Houdini is giving this position a full 3-point advantage. That's like being up a whole piece. He's saying the king can castle. How are these pieces going to untangle themselves? White has full development. I'd give the odds of Akobian winning this game at least 90%. Huge edge for him in this position. So here, knight a2, Ramirez decided to castle and give up his dark square bishop. A little surprising he took it first instead of developing his bishop on this square and then taking it. Queen takes b4. Let's see if we can get the current position in the game. Yeah, this is the current position in the game, and Houdini loves white here, giving him a 1-point advantage, which is about a pawn edge, basically saying that a lot of space, the great bishop, and black's pieces, the dark squares, will be a challenge. In this position, the move b3 is what it's suggesting, threatening bishop to a3. And even though he's sacrificing this pawn, we saw the line where the bishop, this bishop, becomes the dominant piece. So Akobian in the driver's seat here. I think he shouldn't have traded right away, but still, he's got to be happy with his game. And I'm not sure, it looks like he did find the move b3. I believe that is what he played, showing his stuff as number 4 player in the tournament, looking to try to make an even greater move, especially with Lenderman in trouble. If Akobian wins and Lenderman loses, he's tied for first in the championship. Back to you guys.
How quickly things turn.
Now we have, for those of you who stuck with us today, we've got a special treat for you.
Oh.
Yasserisms.
What? I've never heard.
This is a great photo. I love that hairstyle on the left.
Oh my gosh.
To be or not to be, but the question is, when in doubt, take them on. And I'll let you read the rest of them.
Her position is not bad. It's really, really, really bad. Cover your eyes, kids. This is going to get ugly. Okay. She doesn't have her I'm going to win face on. In a dream world, let me show you what the dream is. Ooh, I don't know that. Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, you gotta wear that one on the air.
No, that was my surfer. No, that was my fro and my surfer look. Oh boy, oh boy.
I don't think I ever had a fro like that.
Oh my. Okay, let's move quickly away from that discussion.
And your face is turning into my hair.
And let's take a look at Mac versus Ray Robson. And they do have a very combative position. When Maurice had looked at it, he had looked at it pretty early, this advance e4, e5. Since black was not playing d7, d6, Mac decided, hey, let me give your knight the boot with a gain of a tempo. e5, knight attack bishop on e3. The bishop dropped back. And since Ray was worried that this knight over here on g4 might get stranded, he played f7, f6, breaking up White's center team, e5, f4. There was a trade, knight takes, g2, g3. There's a possibility that this pawn on f4 could be a target for Black's pieces, and White is setting up for playing bishop g2. Knight a5, castles, b5, bishop g2, bishop b7, a trade, bishop f2, protecting the h1 rook, of course. Rook c8, queen d3, castles, knight f3. So what Mac wants to do, he wants to establish his knight in the center of the board. And by the way, also the idea of knight g5 with queen h7 ideas can tickle Black. b5, b4, a typical idea in the Najdorf, kick this knight on c3 backwards or wherever, and knight a4 was played, knight b5. Okay, because the knight went to the a4 square, Black doesn't want to see the knight rerouting itself to b6, so this move by Ray, knight d5, it makes perfect sense. Black protects the b6 square, and the knight on d5 in the middle of the board is a beast. Now, on the other hand, pawn structure favors White, but good play for Black. I like what Ray has done in this game. How about yourself, Jen? I know you like to play the Sicilian from both sides, but maybe you would like White's position.
Well, I don't think that White has the... Normally, we like to have a little bit more attacking chances, you know, like the pawns aren't storming down the board like they normally would in a lot of fun Sicilians, and the knight on a4 is offside, so I'm not as excited about it as I am about most Sicilian positions for White. That being said, I think the knight on f3 and the bishop on f2, if improved, could create a little bit of unpleasantness for White.
For Black. So, I mean, a move like bishop d4, like you say, if improvement is what you want, you can get that right away with a move like bishop d4, or for that matter, knight e5 as well.
Yeah, probably both.
Yeah, you want to do both, which is understandable.
But even though we don't really have much of a threat, but...
Well, just improving your position is a good idea as well.
I mean, h4, h5, h6 is in the cards, but it's a bit slow.
Well, I can understand why you would be attracted to the move h4 because, okay, let's just put it on the board. Because let's say Black plays a move like rook c7, makes perfect sense, doubling rooks down the c file.
Yeah, we also have knight g5.
Right. Yeah. It was this tickle, and by eliminating the knight, you don't eliminate the threat, because the rook on h1 is suddenly brought into the game after h takes g5.
And now g6 really weakens the dark square, so we saw that that wasn't so pleasant. Actually, we saw Lenderman get a draw against Ehrenberg, but Ehrenberg was on the positive side of that draw.
Oh, definitely. And Sergei really actually was kicking himself during the post-game interview that he gave here, where he felt that he really messed up and that he let Lenderman escape what Sergei felt was a lost position for his opponent. And
there might even be some immediate threats in this position, like I'm not sure about rook takes h7, but I would like to put the position on the board after rook f7. Oh, keep going.
Oh, I apologize. So h4, I just played rook c7.
You were talking about dreams, fantasy checkmates.
Okay, absolutely. Well, let's do it.
Especially since yesterday we were gifted with so many of them in Irina's game, right? So many fantasy checkmates, and then the mate on one on the board.
Right. Bishop d4, Molnar versus Ramirez. Bishop d4, you wanted to say rook f7, and you wanted to show how girls play chess.
Yes, that is one of the tactics from Play Like a Girl, right?
Right.
Except probably a game between Stefanova and some poor guy. Or Polgar. Really great female chess champions, and yeah, it's
falling for a checkmate like this one.
And I was thinking maybe somebody would play rook f7 because rook takes h7 might be in the air because of rook h1 check, king g8.
And queen takes g6.
Yeah, so kind of interesting, but of course this is not forced after knight g5. Instead of playing bishop takes g5, or in this position, you can play something different than rook c7.
Right. I'm thinking that I may want to stop the threat altogether of knight g5 with the move h7, h6. But in that case, the inclusion of h4 and h6 is a nice idea for white. I mean, you still could consider a piece sacrifice like knight g5. But I'm thinking that overall, Ray should be pleased because he's the proud possessor of the open C file. So Ray does want to, let's say after h6, let's just play a few more moves after, say, bishop d4, rook c7. What Ray wants to do is swing his rook to c8, doubling his rooks down the c file, and then this knight on a5, it can come into the game nicely with knight c4. And don't forget, this knight on a4 makes a strange impression. If you don't deal well after moves like knight c4, there is this queen b5, and this knight on a4 can end up costing you the game to a threat of queen b5.
Yeah, and that's exactly why you kind of like black, even though white still has some traditional Sicilian play. You're not feeling that knight on a4. I don't blame you. I would like to remind everybody that if you're already starting to miss us, we've got half a tournament left, but we're also going to be back at Sinkfield Cup coming up in late August here in St. Louis, and featuring some of the world's top chess players. It starts Wednesday, August 27th. We don't have the player list for you yet, but keep a close eye on the St. Louis Chess Club Facebook, Twitter, and website. And those names should be confirmed in the next month or so, right?
Right. Well, contracts have been sent out, and we're getting some very positive feedback, as you well know. And we're just hopeful that the elite event of the year will be held in St. Louis.
Yeah,
let's put it like that.
Mark your calendars. And we've got something from Maurice Ashley on one of our games from the Women's Championship.
Yes, Jen, a big missed opportunity by the player with the black pieces here, Katerina Nemkova. Victoria Knee played a wild move. She had already sacrificed a pawn in the opening in order to get some play to entrench her knight on the f5 square, to have a strong queen on this side. No mating threats as yet, but then she played a seriously wild move, the move b4, attacking the knight, simply inviting the move knight to d3. Now that's a truly powerful looking move, the knight hitting the rook, the bishop, and the pawn on e5. How do you defend it all? There are no tricks, there's no funny business here. The only move to actually stay in the game is the wild rook to e3. If she instead had tried to defend this bishop, then she would have had to answer the question, well, what's wrong with me just snapping a pawn off and being up 2 pawns now? Instead of doing that, rook to e3 is playable because after knight takes on c1, now this knight is trapped. So the move knight to c3 or even knight to d2 is playable. This knight, of course, potential force, but it looks like white has everything covered. But now the move bishop to g5, hitting the rook through to the knight. And if you play f4 to stop that, now the bishop drops back. Sneaky move, because now the queen no longer defends the b pawn, and black can just grab this pawn. And Houdini's saying, what's the deal? It's a free pawn. There's no mate. Why not? Instead of doing that, black in this position believed her opponent after b4 and played the simple knight to e6. And now Houdini's saying, white is just fine. Whew! Got to be feeling good right now. A real missed opportunity by Nemkova, playing too passively instead of going for it. She didn't want to risk it, but it might come back to haunt her. Back to you guys.
And we've got some really exciting news in another Women's Championship game. In Seirawan's game against Zitansky, there have been some exciting developments. We were looking at some positions with a queen trade, and we were saying, is Zitansky going to be able to squeeze anything out of this? And instead of going for the queen trade, she played queen to h4 in that crucial moment.
Right. We were just back a moment ago. The queen was on e5. We were looking at these endgames and deciding they really didn't offer her much in the way of winning chances.
Because of rook d1, timely ideas there by Seirawan. So after queen to h4,
ideas of queen takes h2 and queen f2 on the agenda.
So
Seirawan jumped into the position,
so
right?
Trying to hold back that queen on h4. So Anna here played the distracting tactic. Bishop takes g2.
Wow.
Rook can't take on g2
Because of
because
the
of
old
a checkmate in 1, queen e1 mate.
Now, would you describe this as a back rank mate?
Yes.
Me too. Okay, just checking.
But it's kind of like a diagonal slash
Right,
back,
exactly.
So that's why you have to do 20 push-ups and 20 of those obliques.
Obliques,
You know,
because of the slashing
push-ups.
diagonally.
Exactly.
It's a penalty for that one too. Okay, so Anna's just snapped a pawn.
And now the question is, what about queen e5 again? Bring that queen back to e5. What happens then? Because now that bishop on g2 isn't take because we're guarding the e1 square.
Right.
But now queen h2 comes back into the position.
Queen takes h2, queen f2.
And no longer do we have any pressure on the rook on d8.
Right, so we don't like
So that's not going to work.
So let's make a luft, perhaps?
So making luft, and now we actually are threatening rook takes g2.
So the bishop would presumably just drop back to e4, and I don't know, Anna's looking very good. If she gets her bishop to g6 with luft herself, her king's going to be super safe, super solid.
Can we ever snatch on a7 and b6? The problem is f4 is hanging with check.
Exactly. f4 would be hanging with check to black's queen. So it looks like, just going back here to queen h4 for a moment, a calculation error perhaps on behalf of Eswaran. Maybe she didn't find a better way of dealing with black's various threats of queen f2. So in any case, queen c7, I like this. When in doubt, grab the pawn. Bishop takes g2, and Eswaran having to figure out, what do I do now? She just took my pawn.
Her king looks to be the problem here, doesn't it?
Exactly. Her king is not secure. And it's not easy for white here to really develop a threat, because this queen h4, h1 checkmate is so annoying. I guess we're going to have to play bishop d3. No real threat in the position, but I'm just redirecting my bishop to the king side and trying to prevent black from playing bishop e4 herself. So that was why I played the move bishop d3. But lots of choices here for Anna, including just, I don't know, making luft. And then the g file is not going to bring anything special to white. Maurice, if you could share your thoughts on this position, because it is a big, big moment for the young lady Shritha.
And it's a big moment for the tournament, because if Zatansky wins this game, then she's right back in there slugging at it with Irina Krush.
Assuming Irina doesn't pull it out.
That's right. Well, Irina Krush's game today is just getting started. With all decisive games, we can't bet on a draw, but it doesn't look like she has a big advantage or anything like that.
Exactly.
So, and Tatev plays well, so any result is possible in that game.
Right.
Whereas Zatansky looks to be in control in her game. And actually, I think Maurice has something for us in a different game in Mona Robson.
Indeed, Jen. Let me pull that game up and go back a few moves. I was analyzing this position, and it looks as though Robson has a cold-cut win after this move, queen to e4 by white. Robson can just continue on the attack with the move rook to c4, and black's pieces are just swarming around white's king. Plus, this knight looks awful on the a4 square. What to do about this move? If you were to drop your queen back, for example, you run into this nasty shot, b3. And now the threat is here on the c2 pawn with the rook. The threat is on the a2 pawn, looking to queen. A capture here can be met by knight takes with check. Of course, you can't play queen takes knight because of queen takes queen, and you cannot capture back due to the pin on the file. So in this position here, after check, you have to go in the corner. And now black could simply take on a4 or even drop the knight back, because this knight has no home. Where's it supposed to go? It's just under heavy fire. It can't go into b6. If it drops back to c3, it's just going to get snapped off. Again, the pin on the line. So here, white is in huge trouble after this move. Rook to c4. If Ray finds it, it's almost all she wrote in this position. The other rook is coming to the file. The b3 move is almost here. Black is totally dominant, and Ray Robson simply has to find the move. Let's see whether or not he did. And he still has not yet moved in the game. But rook to c4 is simply crushing. If he finds that move, young Ray Robson will be back in the winner's circle, and he's hovering over the board now. I doubt he's going to miss this. Ray's just too good. We'll see, and keep an eye on this next very critical moment in this game here at the championships. Back to you guys.
Poor Mackenzie Mulder. I mean, he's a great player, but having a tough time in the championship. And I think maybe his confidence has been affected because, you know, he made that blunder against Gray.
Right.
And yesterday he was losing, but still can't feel good to miss mate of one psychologically.
Right.
You know, Ramirez gave a very gentlemanly kind of explanation that when you're losing, it doesn't really matter, so you just play.
It was like a brain infarction.
But it's still can't feel good. And then missing rook c4, we have our youngster Akshat Chandra of Quest to GM. He made his first GM norm quite recently at the Marshall Chess Club.
You have mentioned the young
and
man.
He says Mulder seems to have blundered against Robson with 20 queen e4, as rook c4 looks absolutely crushing.
Indeed, that's getting confirmation, yeah.
So that's exactly, he agrees with Maurice.
Well, one of the questions I'm often asked by knowledgeable club players is what are the differences between grandmasters, yeah? Like, and here's a prime example. Really, Max started very well. He drew his first 3 games, I believe, and they're good hard fights. But he lost a game, got rattled, lost again, and it appears after this move rook c4 that I'm sure Ray's about to pounce on. He may lose again. And that's the difference between really, really elite grandmasters, is that they stop the bleeding. If you lose one game, they recover, and sometimes it's incredibly hard to recover when you get into the cycle where, you know, nothing's going wrong, or nothing's going right, pardon me. And that's a big difference between grandmasters and elite grandmasters, I want to say.
That's right, consistency, and I think a lot of that has to do with mental game as well, psychology, and
well, mental toughness, I want to just say too. Like sometimes you just have to will yourself not to lose, or just it's like the force of nature. You just take it on yourself. I'm going to win today. I'm going to win today. I mean, I played in so many tournaments with Garry Kasparov where his at the board presence, his desire, his willpower was overwhelming. Right. Just overwhelmed his opponents at times. Sometimes even Michael Tal, for example, was accused of hypnotizing his opponents because of the way he won so many games in a combinative, sacrificial way.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
It's just the force of will.
Well, I think, though, for some players, for the players who are trying to diagnose it, sometimes it comes down to tilt. We use this word a lot in poker, but I think chess players experience it as well, that it's not a character flaw, it's just something they have to really work on. And realizing that if they lose a lot of games in a row, it doesn't mean that they're a weaker player.
Right.
That they just can start from zero at any time. And, you know, remember at the Sinkfield Cup, which we were just talking about, coming back up in August, Nakamura dealt with his worst foe, Seirawan, by putting on the sunglasses and trying to block that hypnosis. And it worked out well for him in the Sinkfield Cup. He got 2 solid draws, that he was actually on the positive side, I believe, of both of them. Or definitely the black side one.
And in the white side, he was doing well, too. He was pressing a little bit.
So this chess tilt, it exists. And with that, we will take a little commercial break, and feel free to submit your questions and comments to our hashtag USChessChamps and comments at stlouischessclub.org. And we're going to leave you with a little Bobby Fischer puzzle. Try to solve it.
Alrighty.
And we'll be back with more from the championship. my students, you got to look at all the captures, you got to look at all the checks, but what else? You got to look at all the checkmate threats, right? And the checkmating threat. So here, the correct answer is just queen a5, putting extra pressure on a3. And Maurice will tell us why.
Thanks, Jen. Well, here's my fourfold threat matrix that I always tell my students about. First of all, the most forcing move in chess is a check. You have to do something about it. That's big time. If somebody says check, you've got to make a move. So you've got to check. When you're in a position, you've got to study all the possible checks because it may lead to something. Of course, it doesn't always lead to something. The second most forcing move is a threat to checkmate. You can't ignore those. Those are just too powerful. The third most forcing move is a capture. If I take something, you will likely have to take something back because if you don't, you're going to be down material. And then the fourth most forcing is the threat to capture something. If I'm going to take something, obviously, it'll end up in category 3. So those 4 forcing moves must always be studied in every position to see whether or not one of those will lead to something decisive. Well, in this position, Fischer has different ideas, but he doesn't have a check that leads anywhere. The queen check gets kicked out. That's the first in our order of the threat matrix. Queen check does nothing after queen takes queen, just leads to a normal position. But the threat to checkmate, hello, the move he played, now that's serious because queen takes pawn, king back, and queen takes a1 mate is on tap. White has to stop everything and pay attention to that move. Now, white could play the move a4 to stop the mate, but unfortunately, here comes another threat to checkmate, rook to b3, and you're in a world of hurt, having split the attackers here. Queen takes a4, that is the defender. Queen takes a4 is coming, and white is absolutely toast. In the game, after queen a5, Mednes just gave up his queen for the rook and bishop, but that did not help because black's queen became a monster. Queen takes on d5, ripping off the pawn, not giving white any time to play knight e7 and some rook g8 funny business mate. After rook to g7, Fischer said, no problem, let me give a little check. Then he gained time. Maybe he was in a little bit of time pressure getting to move 40, played these checks, and then after king c1, ripped off this pawn. Actually, there was no time pressure. He played that maneuver just to win the pawn, and he's going to win yet another one, and then it's going to be 4 connected pass pawns. This demonstration means nothing at all. Mednes, on looking at the position, decided to resign. Again, the typical power showing by the amazing Bobby Fischer. Back to you guys.
Nice finish. Nice finish. Queen a5 better than queen c5 because of queen a4. Maurice earlier had brought a game to your attention between Victoria Ni and Katya Nemkova, and I want to take a stab at what the players were thinking when Victoria went for that move b4. And I appreciate the computer says knight d3, big advantage to black. But when you're sitting at the board yourself and you're studying the position and you say, oh my God, what am I going to do about bishop h6 going after my pawn on g7? If I grab the rook, which was the idea of the move knight d3, then after bishop takes g7, my goodness, I'm facing threats like knight h6, checkmate, bishop f6, discover checkmate. Probably both players had missed the move h7, h5 as a good defense. But I mean, at least I can understand why both players had this blind spot and said, oh my goodness, you know, bishop h6, I'm scared to death of bishop h6. If I play g6, well, now the rook just moves and gains a tempo, and black is unhappy that this bishop is sitting over here on h6. So I'm just taking a guess that that is the variation that both players were fearful of, and therefore played knight d3.
That's what Maurice was talking about in terms of tactics, that the stronger you get, the more you add things to that, you know, list of candidate moves that you must look at every move, right?
Right.
When you're just starting out, it's tough enough to get them to look at all the checks and checkmate threats, right? You tell them to look at all the captures as well, but you know, it becomes harder. But then it's also, what about moves that attack the queen? What about moves that attack the rook, right?
Right.
So,
there's like a
hierarchy.
cascading. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Okay, so that I did want to take a stab at, you know, of course we've got the computers and they're telling us, you know, like the players have missed this, that, and the other thing. But it's a different when you're under the pressure.
Oh, absolutely.
And you don't see that defensive shot,
That's right.
H7, H5.
Houdini is running over there, but in our computers it's not. So that's why we wonder so much.
Right.
Or I do.
And we've got developments going on in the leaderboard. Alex Lenderman, Tactics, wow. I'm going to have to see what happened here because there's some strange things going on. Let's go back to when we left it. I had been saying for quite some time that I liked Sam's position. Maurice left it about here, rook c7. Lenderman did jettison a pawn for a hope for good play for his two bishops with his knight on d4. However, there's still issues. There's another pawn weakness in the position for white. The a3 pawn is weak, and black is still menacing a7, a5. The game continued rook c1, putting black in a pin so that the knight is not going to grab this pawn on a3 anytime soon. The game continued rook c8, simply defending. Knight f5. Hello. There's a check in the position, forking king and queen. Forking king and rook. Knight b6. Wow. Knight d6. Wow. Okay, a discovered attack against the rook. There was a trade. Black has two threats. He has a threat to check on the first rank, trying to skewer the rook. His second threat is to capture this knight on f5. Lenderman's only move in the position was knight e7 check, and now Sam Shanklin to played king f8, attacking the knight.
Wow, that bishop on a4 ended up being very useful because otherwise bishop d1 and all of those variations.
Yeah, rook c1 check, the bishop could block, but guess what? That bishop, as you just said, covering the d1 square. So check to Sam's king, king f8, knight g6 check.
Because bishop takes d6, just rook c1, king d2, rook takes h1, and I suppose there's no good discoveries there.
Exactly.
So that's kind of interesting that we've seen this in a couple of games here in the championship, that you have this opportunity to make a double check, a discovered check, but
they don't really do any great benefit. In this case, you wouldn't, but that's it. And this would be a winning ending for Sam.
How easy, though? Let's see. It's 5. Oh, because we picked up a pawn along the way as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, so this should be good.
Full exchange.
Extra 2 pawns, yeah.
Full exchange ahead. So we got this position. King, I beg your pardon. We don't have this position.
So instead of bishop takes d6, he played knight to g6 check.
And now we're expecting king e8.
Because obviously taking on g6 allows bishop takes d6, snagging the rook, which we've been doing all that carnage with.
Exactly.
So instead, knight g6 check, you're expecting king to e8?
Yes. So now, again, white is facing a task of, he's got to deal with this rook c1 check in the position. He's got to deal with the fact that his knight is hanging. I'm supposing he's going to castle, and he's hoping that black will just be kind enough just simply to take the knight and allow a swap. I don't think that Sam's going to allow that, by the way. I think that Sam's got other.
And that would just be a pawn up endgame, but.
Which is nice enough.
But perhaps Sam has more, is your point?
Yes, precisely. I think that Sam would have more in this position.
Rook c2 allows bishop d1.
Precisely.
So that's not my favorite. But maybe moving the knight on d6.
Right. Moving the knight on d6 is one. Like a nice little centralizing move like knight e4. Keep in mind that this bishop on b4 is not on a permanent home. And for example, let me just play a move. I don't know, knight f4, or should I play knight e5? What would you prefer?
Play knight e5, sure.
Okay, let's go back a move. So knight e5, and again, black's a safe, solid pawn to the good, and after a move like b7, b6, wanting to harass this bishop, I think he's got the initiative as well.
Indeed, it seems that way.
Maurice, what do you think?
I definitely like black in that position. It seems as though white is fighting for his life, but Lenderman fighting back tenaciously. On this board, however, there's going to be no such thing for white. White is about to get creamed in the game between Molnar and Robson. Robson did play the move rook to c4, a monster move, attacking the queen, preparing the move b3 and the move rook fc8. And in this position, Molnar tried rook d4. That looks like a pretty solid move. The rook is defended a lot by this knight, this bishop, this queen. Everything looks good. The problem is that he's losing cold. Now, the most natural move to my eyes, the move I play in blitz, rook fc8, that wins. In fact, Houdini says, yeah, that's winning, no doubt about it. But here's something sweeter, even more funky, the move b3. Check that out. Your rook's hanging, but this pawn is going to become a girl. Check how it's going to take on a2. And if you play rook takes rook, obviously you can't. Let's just back up 1 second. Here, if you play pawn takes pawn, then after knight takes with check, you're being forked on the d4 square at the minimum. You're also losing the knight on a5 and a4, so that's not a move. But after b3, rook takes on c4, pawn takes, threatening to become a queen, king d2. Give me that. This is just a Houdini variation that I wanted to show that's quite spicy. The move knight takes f4. Out of nowhere, a shot along this entire diagonal, looking to collect everybody on this square. If you take here, queen takes, this whole sector is under attack. Black's position is just exploded. And of course, there's a rook hang. What could you do? This check is coming. That pawn is hanging. Everything is hanging. So after the move, rook to d4, if Ray plays b3, it'll just be a scintillating game. Again, like I said, he could play the solid rook over to c8, but this would be a nice piece sacrifice. Double piece sacrifice would be really interesting. Of course, you could also play king b1, but who wants to look at this position? I mean, the king is totally exposed. Anything and everything looks bad, as the black pieces would be swarming all around his king. So Ray Robson, we'll see if he finds the move b3, but the fact is he doesn't have to. In fact, he looked like he didn't bother with it. He did double rooks, the most natural human move in the position, but it's still black for choice. So it looks as though black's going to win this game and start to come back. And there we see Ray kind of maxing and relaxing. He's like, I got this one. I know how to do. Back to you guys.
Actually, that is very telling that Ray is up from the board looking at the games from afar, because he's so often in time trouble. He doesn't really have that luxury often of walking away from the table, but it does go to show that he's very confident in his position.
Well, let's take a look at Abrahamian Crush over in the Women's Championship. That Titanic battle, I believe that it's going to be a really intense one, because both of these players are using up a lot of time. You know, only on move 20, considering that many of the opening moves were theory. That's a lot of time. So about 20 minutes. I'm showing about 18 minutes for Tate, then 22 for Irina.
Right.
So I think it's going to get quite interesting, and we've got some developments.
1826.
Oh, okay. And
so pretty good edge in the clock for Irina.
Let's see this last move, knight to c6. What's going on with it?
Right. Let's just see how we got to this. Because the ladies had a position like this, and I was a little bit afraid that this move, king g1 to h1, Tateev was preparing the move f2, f4. I didn't like that approach that she took. I thought that she should be trading all 4 knights. f4 was played, takes on d5, and what's left is a pretty nice centralized knight in the middle of the board.
Surely the best piece so far.
Exactly. f7, f6, just covering the pawn on e5. b4, with a very straightforward idea of getting a passed pawn in the center, either the c pawn or the d pawn. Irina captured, knight takes, bishop b5. This is looking good for black. I still like black's position.
And now it's not to play the move knight a5, eyeing the c6 square.
Exactly.
Irina played queen to b6.
Okay. And
now
knight
c6 anyway.
Okay, so
despite the fact that it looked like Irina's last move would have prevented that, but
well, Irina's move, queen b6, was designed to try to dissuade white from jumping in the center, but she jumped in.
I guess the idea here is that if knight c6, pawn c6, bishop c6, we have this little bishop c4 check.
Knight c6, d6, bishop c4
even
check.
that, bishop c4 check. Now,
with the idea that if Irina moves her king, you want to capture
well, that's
here?
not okay.
Pardon me?
But that doesn't quite work because king h8 after queen takes d6, we fall into another tactic. So that you're right, that move king h1 earlier.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So now there's bishop takes g2 in the position.
Exactly.
And
that's a discovered check, and white ends up losing her queen after bishop takes g2.
But instead, can white round up this pawn anyway? I don't know.
I like Irina's position. Go back a second after knight c6. Does Tatiev have a different idea in mind? We're looking at knight takes c6.
So maybe just bishop takes b5.
I
Yeah.
don't like that much because, again, we've got this great knight in the center. Maybe Tatiev is thinking that if she can get her bishop to e6, that would be kind of an equalizer, so to speak. The bishop on e6 will be well placed.
I mean, it's better than losing a pawn.
Right.
But you're right that minor piece on d4 leaves a great impression.
So, battle of the ideas going on again in this key matchup between five-time champion, defending champion Irina Krush versus Abrahamian.
Now, if Tatiev tried to play the other way and take on c6 and then play perhaps some quiet move to try to round up the pawn, is it possible?
Like to keep that bishop check in reserve, or to play the bishop check and then to play a quiet, like here, and perhaps something like this one?
I was looking, but I guess you just have rook d8, right?
Sure.
And if I try to play bishop d5, then the problem is that at the end of the variation, my b4 pawn hangs. So.
Right, you mean trade.
I was thinking rook coming into c6, but
okay,
now we're down 2 pawns. Yeah.
Precisely. So again,
so it seems like she'd have to go for the route you were thinking of.
Right, a very good knight on d4 and a good bishop on e6 type of deal.
I mean, looks attractive for black, but at the same time, not really a lot of weaknesses and a lot of trades going on. So perhaps that's Tatiev's best chance here to try to minimize the damage of the knight on d4.
Right. So Irina looking very good in this position. I do favor her game. We haven't seen it in a while. It's a heavyweight matchup, and it's like the players have been throwing pillows at each other rather than haymakers. I got the wrong board. I'm sorry. I wanted to bring up the game between Gadakamsky and Alexander Onishuk.
Although that has progressed in the way that we predicted with knight e5 and your move b6, harassing that bishop on b4.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I pulled up game 1. So in our heavyweight matchup, just it just appears a lot of maneuvering has taken place. It's not the world's most exciting game, I'm sorry to say, folks. The C file opened up. Both players doubled on the C file, and the maneuvering kept going on and on and on. And white, again, he's got a nice edge in space, but whether that can be converted into anything tangible, like an extra pawn or something, I'm going to just suggest that there's going to be a lot of hacking down the C file. And White's pieces are a little bit better, but boy, I mean, this is going to be like squeezing blood out of stone. This is not what I think is going to be sufficient to give either player any chances here. Just that the position is too static. Let's go back to our leader, Alex Lenderman, in trouble against Sam Shanklin. And
so b6 did occur, and now rook to a1.
Right, because I was mentioning that this pawn on a3 was a potential target. Also, because a7, a5 is in the position, Lenderman is thinking that he's going to be forced to drop his bishop back. He didn't want his rook trapped on the f1 square, so he played rook a1. He's a pawn down, trying to put up his best defense, but I see that this is just, I mean, if Sam's technique doesn't desert him, Sam Shanklin could be upsetting our tournament leader, who's had such a phenomenal run so far in this tournament.
Upset is a strange word, because on one hand,
they're comparably rated.
Well, even Shanklin's a bit higher, but
Okay.
yet Lenderman's performing so well that it feels like an upset, but it's not really an upset, is it?
Right. It's just that, you know, you're playing an opponent who's having a 2850 TPR, tournament performance rating, and your opponent has white as well. So that's a big result right there.
Upset in the literal sense of the word, for sure. Now, it would be nice, again, if black could play rook to c2, but again, that move bishop to d1 is still in the air.
Right.
So how do we get our rook active in this position?
This is the oopsie daisy variation
We have to, but
yeah, where we're not
lose the
happy.
game.
We're not happy about that. Well, I would say that black would let me just give this a think for a second. What's my ideal setup? My ideal setup would be to involve this knight, get this knight onto the c5 square. So I'm going to have to kick this knight out of the way. So after, for example, a move like a5, bishop back, I would be looking at this move knight c3. The idea behind the move knight c3 is to get my knight to e4. So I'm just going to put...
Superfluous knight, right? Or codependent knight, as Rex likes to say.
The codependent. Dvoretsky, the superfluous
the
knight.
idea is that knight on e4 is like such a beautiful piece. So even though the bishop on e1 leaves a lot to be desired, you don't mind trading them and then replacing that knight with another strong knight on e4, which also, to boot, allows you that f6 push, kicking out the knight on e5.
Exactly. So I'm just thinking that what Sam needs to do is further activate his pieces. The knight on f6 gets into the game. Not 100% sure about this knight on c3, by the way. It might end up being kind of funnily placed on the d1 square.
Yeah, you kind of wanted to encourage bishop takes c3, rook takes c3.
Right.
To get your fun and games going?
First of all, to get rid of White's two bishops, right? Because that's his one thing that he does have going for him. But
well,
I
it's
think
interesting that you respect the two bishops even when they're on e1 and f1, but that's the end game. So
yes.
It's a lot different than some of the positions where we're joking about the Fisher random setup.
Right.
And we got something from Maurice Ashley in another game.
In quite a few games, there's some interesting things going on, Jen. I wanted to point out this position where Akobian had gotten a very nice advantage against Ramirez, but he didn't play quite accurately, so he still has an edge. But what I want you to note is that it's only move 19, and Akobian has 9 minutes left on his clock. Of course, there's a 30-second increment every move, so he's going to gain back at least 10.5 minutes for the rest of the game, but he's sub 9 minutes right now, and it's not like he has some clear win in the position going forward. I mean, he's got a normal position. There's no mating attack. There's no squeeze play. He's just played the move a5, chasing the queen backwards, but he's going to have to really giddy up if he's going to make this position happen for him, because he's definitely in some serious time pressure right now. Another position I wanted to look at was the game between Eswaran and Zatonsky. This position, Eswaran is definitely down a pawn, but Zatonsky is going to have some problems converting it. She's got the extra pawn on this side. She's going to be trying to push this pawn forward. The youngster does have the move bishop to c4 right now, trying to put some pressure on this pawn. They both are at 18 minutes after 25 moves, so some time pressure there as well. Another game I wanted to note, something interesting. This game with 21 minutes on one side, that is for white, and 13 minutes for black, between Friedel and Gureyev, nothing has been exchanged. Not one trade on the board after 25 moves, and they're going to be closing in on time pressure really soon. So this one should be really fun to watch as time pressure starts to rear its ugly head. You just saw how Gureyev glanced at his clock, that quick glance of nervousness. So it looks like in a lot of these games, it's going to be about the clock. Back to you guys.
That's a remarkable game, playing 25 moves. No pawn captures, no piece captures. I think the record is 44 moves. I seem to recall a game where 44 moves, for those of you following us, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that score, but 25 is quite a lot. The hippopotamus, very flexible, amorphous type of defense, and Josh hasn't been able to get on his positional grippers yet. But let's just see how the maneuvering has gone from the time we left it. We were around these parts where we had noted that Timur was just castling by hand, spending several tempi to cover his h6 pawn, bishop h2, knight h7. Very hard to guess these moves. This move I like principally because it opens up the possibility of c4 and it repositions the knight to a better square. Knight e2, knight c8, okay, similar idea. Black wants to bring his knight to the c4 square. h4, okay, finally somebody is throwing the patties here. Ideas of h5 perhaps in the position. Knight c4, queen c1. Boy, a very big maneuvering game. And h5 by black, c3, queen d2. Again, not too much is happening.
So the hippopotamus will get more interesting as we see at least one trade.
One day.
Give me a prediction. What's the first pawn that will be traded or piece?
Oh boy, yeah, okay. It's total guesswork.
Knight on b6 is doing a good job of stopping me from playing a4 or c4.
It's total guesswork on my part, but I'm going to hazard that somehow, I don't know exactly how, dark square bishops are going to be traded first.
All right, interesting prediction. I'd say I'm going to go with knights.
You think a pair of knights will be traded? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
See what I did there? I got two chances.
A sushi roll? Okay, we got a sushi roll on this one. Come on!
For me, I have two knights. You only have one, though, right? You said dark squared bishop. I just said a knight.
Oh, I didn't realize I was giving you 2-to-1 odds. Darn. Outfoxed again.
No way.
I'm betting a pawn. I get 8 pawns that could be traded. A pawn is going to get traded.
No sushi for you.
Right. Okay. So
we do have one official result in, you guys.
Oh, we do.
Naroditsky and Ehrenberg have drawn their game.
All right.
So Naroditsky coming off his first win of the tournament yesterday, now made a draw against Ehrenberg.
All right. Let me just bring. I saw it was a Caro-Kann. I didn't think anything really too earth-shattering happened in this game. Essentially, from the beginning, the players went down a very long mainline variation of the Caro-Kann, one that I've played many times, and went straight to a well-known ending. It goes to show you how advanced opening theory has become. All of these moves have been seen before, and I dare say even by myself. Back in 1989, I actually had a game in Canada where I played this position as black. I don't think I played the move f7, f5, by the way. But all of this whole endgame has been played before, and nothing special is going on still.
Well, we've got a lot of action going on in other games, so don't want to dwell on this one too much. It was a draw right after 31 moves. I do have a great comment from one of our friends over at chess.com, who, by the way, are sponsoring our Best Question of the Day contest. You get some premium memberships over there for your questions.
Diamond membership.
Diamond, chesskid.com. Yep. He says, in Rogoff Williams, the World Junior Championships in Stockholm, 1969, the first capture was made on move 94.
Oh, be serious.
Wow. We gotta look that up. And that
deserves a membership. Come on.
He works at chess.com.
Oh, no.
Our friend at chess.com.
Sorry.
Michael Klein's like, I'm on chess.com all day. What do I
get a membership?
This is my job. Now you want me to be there all?
Clever.
So, we'll take a look at that. And that, of course, is Ken Rogoff, who you might see on CNN from time to time, but never talking about chess.
Right. Grandmaster Ken Rogoff, IMF chief economist, and now
professor at Harvard as well.
Yeah,
exactly.
Harvard economist.
And an author. So, we've got some interesting things going on at Tatev Abrahamian Crush. That game did not go quite as we expected, and we have more on that game from Maurice Ashley.
90-plus moves without a trade. I don't think we could put that game on television anytime soon. Well, this game, though, does belong on TV. Why? Because these two fighters are now in time pressure. Crush had a comfortable lead on the clock. That's evaporated. Now she's at 11 minutes to play the rest of her moves. That's 18 moves that she's going to have to play with the 30-second increment. That's going to give her back about 9 minutes, but that's probably not going to be enough in a position like this. The game proceeded after knight a5, queen b6, knight to c6, the move king to h8, bishop takes, pawn takes, and now queen to f2. And Crush has been sitting on this position with her knight pinned to her queen for quite some time. I think that she needs to find something normal to do. There are lots of moves she could make. Just put a rook on the c file, in fact. There's no more fork on the e7 square, but she's taking her sweet time here and getting into more and more time pressure. That could be dangerous. The leader in the tournament, Irina Crush, on the women's side, she had looked totally dominant up to this moment, never in trouble, but now definitely thinking quite a bit. It looks like she's finally moved. Let's see if we can get up to date on this position. She played a rook f to e8, and now it's Tatev's move, but 13 minutes on Tatev's clock, 11 minutes on Irina's clock, so the game is definitely going to heat up in just a few minutes, so we'll keep our eye on it here at the championships. Back to you guys.
Absolutely. A critical game here for the championship. Irina Crush, remember, if she draws this game and wins, they'll be tied at the top. And that'll also give Tatev some chances to get back into the tournament with a lot of wins as well. Right. So it'll be interesting to see how this game goes. But don't you see a lot of trades in the air? This last move by Irina kind of anticipating a potential knight takes d4, that her rook will be activated.
Right.
But as much as I'm excited for it to heat up, I'm wondering, are there too many trades for it to heat up enough?
Well, I was thinking that Irina might have wanted to play rook a4 to be able to double up on the a file one day, put pressure on the b pawn. But Tatev had prepared a very nasty little trap here that I wanted to share with our viewers. How about this one? Knight takes e5. You think that pawn on e5 is super fortified, really, really well protected. And you were talking about trading the knights and stuff like this. This move, knight takes e5, can be a really unpleasant surprise because suddenly you can't take the knight because of the pin. And guess what? I also have a fork in the position, and the knight on d4 has been undermined.
What a knight!
So,
right, and that
so
I
that's
think those people at home are getting their triceps worked out today. Plenty of back rank mates.
And Maurice, you've got some thoughts on this one too.
I'm not looking at that one. I'm looking at something else that just exploded on Robson versus Molnar. It said Molnar with the white pieces. Robson, we saw, doubled his rooks, and Molnar played this move b3, and Robson went for it with rook takes on c2. Looks like the simple trade of 2 rooks for a queen and pawn. In fact, it's going to be much worse for white after this move, queen to c6 check. The main problem is this diagonal pressure here. It's going to be big time. Where to put the king, where to hide it. If you try to tuck it in on this square, in fact, it doesn't matter where you put it, this monster move is going to land on the board, knight to c3, and that move attacks this knight on a4 and also pressures this knight on f3. If white defends normally, now black just attacks like crazy with this move, knight to c4. And now there's really no place to put the king because it's going to be about this knight, this queen, this pawn, and this bishop that's just going to swarm into the position quite rapidly. Move like this could just be met by knight a3 and a mate threat down here. This pin is preventing this knight from moving to help. No rook to c1 anywhere. Black is all over white. It should be a matter of minutes before we see Ray coming downstairs to be interviewed because this is just a wipeout on the chessboard. Guys?
Wow,
the power of the queen on the attack, huh?
And the power of the Sicilian.
Yay.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back for more from the U.S. Championships and U.S. Women's. You don't want to miss a minute because we are going to have some exciting time pressure, especially in that crucial game in the Women's Championship, Crush Abrahamian. While you're waiting for us to come back, we, as usual, have a Bobby Fischer gem for you.
Yes.
And we are back at the 2014 U.S. Chess Championship and U.S. Women's Chess Championship. And we have Grandmaster Maurice Ashley with our latest Bobby Fischer puzzle.
Yes, Jen, normally when a piece is pinned, it's not supposed to be able to move, but strong players know that they can always break the rules because it's not really a rule, it's just simply a principle. And so in this situation, it's one thing to try to move a knight like a bishop. It's another thing to just simply ignore a pin because you've got something else juicy going on. And Fischer found that with the move knight to f5, threatening a very nice knight to e7 check and mate. Black, however, has this move rook takes g2 with check. Might have thought, why? You can't move your knight, I have a check. But after king to f1, suddenly the mate is still on tap and the rook cannot go back to g7 to guard that square. What can you do about it? Sherwin played the move b6 and Fischer continued with the check. And after king to b7, Fischer got rid of this piece on the square. The rook is hanging. It was being defended by that bishop. It no longer is. Sherwin made one more move, rook back, but then he realized that there were a couple of wins here, the simplest one just being knight to d8 check, saving the knight so that he can then save the bishop, and Black's just going to simply be down a piece. So he decided, I'm not playing the great Bobby Fischer down a piece. Makes no sense, so he resigned. So that is the solution of our puzzle for the day. Well, it looks like we're throwing out a lot of puzzles today, so you're getting your money's worth out there watching us. Back to you guys.
And we have a result, Jen.
That's right. Ray Robson has defeated Mackenzie Volner.
And I saw that Mac was really down on the clock, but he was under trouble ever since that rook sacrifice. Maybe I'm going to toss it back to Maurice to take us through those final moves that, that gave Ray the victory.
Yes, and I expect that we'll hear from Ray Robson soon. So if you got any questions for him, you know, tweet at us at US Chess Champs. Hashtag US Chess Champs, that is.
Champs.
Yes, guys, exactly what we thought would happen pretty much did happen. The move rook takes on c2 and the double capture on this square. And then Ray did find queen c6. And now the king decided to go to d2 instead of b2 or anywhere else. It didn't matter because this monster move was dropping on the board, knight to c3. That move attacking this knight through to the rook. This knight cannot move, obviously. Rook to d3 was played, and now the move knight takes a4, just ripping apart the structure on this side. B takes a4 was played, and then knight to c4 check, and this is just horrible right now. All sorts of problems for the white pieces. He didn't play king e2 in the position, but that could have been met by the move knight to b2. And what to do here? Whole position is creaking. A move like rook b3, queen to c2, and it's just horrible. This knight ready to go to another monster square, maybe after this, a square like this. He's just being squeezed here. White decided he had seen enough. Also, maybe his time was just so bad. It looks like he had only 2 minutes on his clock. And he said, that's all she wrote, giving his opponent due respect. You know, Jen, we would have liked to see him play a little bit more just so we could see the finish. I know you have proposed this idea that grandmasters should not resign. I don't think they're going to take up that cause anytime soon when they're being humiliated. So Molnar decided he had seen enough. Back to you.
Just got to change the way you look at it. But let's go quickly take a look at Tatev Abrahami and Irina Krush, because things have changed in that game. It seems to me that Tatev is going for it, but I don't know if there's enough to justify the rover that she's performed in this position. We got a question about that earlier in the broadcast, actually, while you pull up the game. Rover, rook up and over.
Right, kind of a rook lift, but a nice way, a nice term. I think, did you coin that? Because I hadn't heard it before.
An old chess coach who told me, and I can't even remember. Like one of the chess camps I went to as a child, they taught me about the rover, and of course, that's not something you forget.
No, absolutely.
But,
when we had left it more or less about these parts. Irina had just played the move rook on f8 to e8, solid move, avoiding that trap. This is the rover that we've been discussing. Rook came to c3 and rook over to h3, menacing the various sacrifices here on the h6 square. And then after rook h3, it's kind of one of those, if it works, you're a genius. If it doesn't, your rook is just kind of, what's it doing over there?
It's going to look silly, exactly.
So queen b7.
So now with queen b7, she gets out of the pin, and now knight c6 is back on the menu.
Exactly. Sorry for my terrible arrow drawing. There was a trade.
Never
A
forgive
trade.
you.
Exactly. Trades. And now queen takes d4, I believe, has been executed
that was
on the
played,
board.
and we should point out both players. They've got about 13 moves to make till time control, and both well under 10 minutes. Irina with about 7.5, and Tatev with about 5.
Right.
And after queen takes d4, rook takes a2 on the board.
Okay. So
Now, luckily for Tatev, I mean, even though that rook on h3 doesn't seem to be doing much, it can get right back into the game with a single move. So what do you think, Yaz? Who's got the edge here?
well, the first point is, obviously, we were very happy to have our passed pawn. The problem is we can't advance it because that would expose our g2 pawn to queen takes g2 checkmate.
Yeah, don't accidentally touch it. You know, Tatev actually dealt with that problem immediately by playing rook g3.
Exactly.
So now she's guarding the pawn on g2, and now she's bringing back some hints of rook takes f6 into the position, but it's not going to work quite yet because the king on h7, it's close, but it's not quite working because
There's a back rank mate for white too,
there's
though.
a back rank mate for us, and even if we dealt with that, it seems that black is defending laterally. So
Well, still, I think that the big thing here is that I actually prefer white now. Before, I liked Irina's position, but in this exact position of an endgame with only major pieces, it's about who has the better pass, who has the more potent pawn. And in this case, it's clear that white's pawn on d5 is golden. And she's looking, like you said, at sacrifices like rook f6, as well as simply pushing the pawn d6. And I think Irina, defending champion Irina Krush, has seen the game turn against her in this,
well, she has
fifth round.
got some ideas for activities too with rook e2. So we're gonna come right back to this game after our interview with Grandmaster Ray Robson, who just won a very exciting game against Mackenzie Molnar. He's with Maurice Ashley.
Indeed, Grandmaster Ray Robson played a thrilling game, one you got to be happy to be a part of. Ray, welcome to the show. We don't have a lot of time, but this moment here, you played this monster move, rook to c4. Did you feel that you were completely winning at this point?
Yeah, originally I wanted to play b3, which is probably just much better, but then I saw the idea of rook c4, rook d4, rook fc8, and basically either I'm going to play b3 or take on c2, and either way it looked like it was hopeless for him.
Yeah, the computer agrees with you. Where did he go wrong in this game?
I think perhaps one of maybe his first mistake was taking on f6 and move 11. After that, I already had a very comfortable position, and I think maybe black's already slightly better even, and my advantage just kept growing.
You got to be feeling good with a win. Who do you play tomorrow, and what are you thinking about going into that game?
I believe I'm white against Jacobian, and it's a pretty big game for me because I guess we're both in contention for an Olympiad spot. So potentially if I win, maybe I would be tied with him in the tournament. So hopefully I can try to press him with white.
Indeed, a big game. Before I let you go, one last question. What's your opinion of this game with our tournament leader against Sam Shanklin?
Well, Sam is very close to winning, I think. The a4 pawn is weak, and black's obviously up a pawn. So yeah, maybe Alex is going to get his first loss.
Big words. Good luck in the rest of the tournament. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So, Alexander Lenderman in trouble for sure. Ray Robson with a big game tomorrow for a spot on the Olympic team potentially. Back to you guys.
Hasn't Ray been one of our most decisive players in the tournament? Boy, he's been throwing out patties, but receiving a couple as well. What's his overall record in the event?
Well, that
so
win
far?
brings him to 3 points.
3 out of 6. So
that's right. So
but he's had
even
four decisive games.
Yeah, so more of an emotional roller coaster than, say, another player who took most draws, right?
Mm-hmm. So,
And that really shakes up the standings, though, if Lenderman is going to lose, right?
Oh, big time.
And then it's really anybody's tournament.
yeah, that blasts the field wide open. By the way, Irina did play the move that you mentioned, counterplay with the move rook, let me just go back. She has just played the long move, rook e8 to e2, doubling on the second rank and also preventing white from playing d6.
Now we got a quick move from Tatev, h3.
Exactly, making look for king, setting up for those rook sacrifices that you've mentioned, Jen. Rook takes f6. I'm assuming...
That's right, rook takes f6 now's in the air because also with that rook leaving the 8th rank, rook takes f6, pawn takes f6, queen f6, king h7. We've got queen g6 and mate on g8.
Precisely, so a terrible move. I just put a terrible move to show the variation that white is dreaming about, sacrificing a rook and making a checkmate pattern in that way. But I'm looking at a different move for black. I'm thinking that Irina could play a move like, pardon me, maybe not rook on a to d2, because in this case I do have rook to d2, but perhaps the other rook, rook on e2 to d2, trying to get rid of this very important pawn on the d5 square. Let's just continue the variation for a move or two. Rook down, check. I'm still dreaming about checkmate, rook takes. Check this out. This is going to be wild, at least this variation. So I want to give a checkmate over here, but I think white lands first with rook takes h6. How's this for a nice checkmate?
Wow, and now if king takes, you've got queen h8, and if pawn takes, you've got that same queen g8 mate.
Precisely. So this game really heating up, and what are the times?
Just in time for time pressure. Well, Irina is ticking down. She's still thinking. She's got less than 3 minutes. I think what's going on is that she's looking at some of these variations.
Exactly.
Because Irina generally used to have big time pressure problems, but lately she's mostly solved them. So that means if she's thinking, it's because there's tactics that are abounding.
Right, and it's not easy to control them. And again, yes, so she has played the move I anticipated. She did play this move, rook on e2 to d2. And again, the variation we just looked at very briefly was the queen coming to c5, eyeballing the f8 square. And I just thought that this continuation may be very favorable for white because of that huge threat, rook takes h6, landing with a checkmate.
Some very exciting variations. Now, we'll talk to play queen to c5. Are there any other moves in the position? It seems that that's definitely the most logical. We'll keep our eye on that. Meanwhile, we've got Maurice on another key battle in the Women's Championship. Seirawan versus Zatansky. Last time we checked, Zatansky was very much on top. What's going on now?
Well, she has extended her advantage in this game. Look at the white king. It looks terrible. This happened in time pressure. After this move, king to g7, Seirawan decided instead of staying solid and just sitting there, she played the move b4, a bit unusual to make a pawn move like this around your king. And Zatansky was like waving a red flag in front of a bull because she played the move a5 in response, looking to rip apart the king side after bishop to b5, rook back to d8. And Seirawan couldn't figure out anything else but to take on a5, b takes a5, and it looks like she might be in serious trouble here. This queen is thinking about coming down to d1 with some back rank issues afoot. This rook has to watch out because of the pin on the b file. Both sides with under 6 minutes. Actually, Zatansky has 6 minutes and 6 seconds, and Seirawan has only 4:55 and counting with 6 moves to make. Even with her increment, her position is so bad, it looks like she will lose this game. Another game to take a look at where there was a blunder actually in this position. Jacobian Ramirez, just going back a few moves, there was a very deep idea in this position after actually to this point here. This moment, black played knight f8, and both of them are in time pressure. Jacobian now down to 2:31 and counting. After knight to f8, white missed a very sweet move, a win of a pawn. Bishop takes. It looked like this was a mistake because of bishop to b3. No doubt he saw that, but check this out. After rook to e1, rook takes e5. White could have played queen to b2, forking the two pieces and winning a pawn. A time pressure mistake, an oversight by Jacobian. It doesn't matter if you're winning. If you don't have time on the clock, you're not going to find good moves. And it seems like this is an opportunity that Jacobian missed, and now he's in some severe time pressure. Now it's 2:23. You saw he just got that extra 30 seconds having to try to keep up. And on the women's side, another game that's interesting is the game between Baginskaite and Melechina, although this position looks like Baginskaite had a big edge and now has frittered it away in time pressure. Again, if she plays the move king to g2 here after this check, then rook to f8 causes severe problems for her. She's going to have to drop back with her rook, and then the queen will drop back. And she's studying this. She has such a great position, but she's given Melechina counterplay. So time pressure is making fools of everyone, it looks like, at the championships. They're up against it now, trying to figure out exactly what to do so that they don't actually lose the game on time or make a horrible blunder. Back to you guys.
And speaking of time pressure, we've got our defending champion, Grandmaster Irina Krush, with less than a minute left on her clock after Tatev did play the move that you suggested, this queen to c5. Now, I'm sure she's starting to see these variations with queen f8 and rook h6.
Rook h6, nice.
And that's why probably in this position, what are her other options? Can't she just defend the back rank? Let's say she plays rook to a8. Not a pretty move.
Yes,
but
exactly.
She might end up having to make a move like that.
Right.
It looks like she's done something similar. Instead of guarding her back rank with a piece, she's played king to h7 with only 5 seconds left when she played that move.
No way. She was down to 5 seconds, so
down
she
to
got
5 seconds.
So she got the 30
so she's
second
up to 35 seconds now.
Wow. You're right. She could have dropped back with her rook. There are so many tactics here that you suddenly have to be aware of. I'm just looking at a silly line of sacrificing a rook. But in this case, unfortunately, there is a check that allows you to hang in there. But that was not the move that Irina played.
So
you said king h7.
So
Oops, sorry.
So that allows, so white can still play queen to f8 here, but in that case...
she's not committed. She has not, in that case, committed herself to capturing the pawn on d5. So
right, so rook to d5, rook takes f6 would still be possible, but what can black do? Because I'm seeing that if queen f8, rook a8, we have rook takes g. Oh, we don't have rook takes g7.
Well, well, just to show, if
that would
you
be an anonymous way to lose the game.
If you went queen f8 with the idea that after rook a8 you wanted to meet this move with rook takes g7, it's a wonderful tactic. You're trading
wonderful
rook.
Tactic for black.
Yeah, you're trading rooks, but
for Irina.
But guess what? There's a small problem. The pawn on d5 is in the way, and there's no protection for the pawn on g2.
And that leads us to checkmate, right? So instead, Tatev, thinking in herself low on time, she's got less than 3 minutes.
Wow.
She's almost down to 2 minutes.
Wow.
Trying to figure out how to continue here, and there's maybe this move king h7 was a good move.
Well, I'm sure it is.
Let's take a
Maurice.
look and see what Maurice thinks about this move.
Well, a simple and dangerous looking continuation here is just the move rook to e1. With the threat of putting a rook on the e7 square, that move would amp up the pressure in the position. She would have to play Irina something like rook to e2. She'd have to think about whether or not she should take this pawn, which could still lead to the move rook down to e7. We'll take a look at that. If she takes here instead on d5, there's still this move rook to e7 and this position to see whether or not this is something she wants to play. This line is quite interesting. They'd have to evaluate this with the time ticking down. I'm not sure what's actually going on here. It looks, according to the computer, that this position is fine for black. A move like rook to g5 would keep her in the game, but she has to calculate all of it because she's going a pawn down in this line after rook takes. This pawn will hang. So much to think about in a tense moment in the game. Guys?
It did happen. Rook to e1 was played on the board. And again, Irina with just about 8 seconds left on the clock when she played it. So 38 seconds on her clock now. Rook to e1, rook takes d5.
And we're anticipating rook e7. Oh my gosh, Tatev, do you see? Do you see her like reach with her hand and everybody?
Well, Tatev doesn't have a lot of time either. She's got less than 2 minutes.
Oh, so
She's got a minute and 40. You can see on the official site, uschesschamp.com/live, you're going to see all of the
and she's played
time
wow.
codes.
And Arena in trouble, even though I hear what Maurice said, that the computer thinks that in a position like this, black can play. But trust me when I say having those double rooks on the 7th is enough to scare anybody. I mean, after King G8, I'm thinking you're just going to move the rook and you're setting up for all kinds of mates. Black is going to have to step back with her rook. And of course, the computer may defend it, you know, perfectly well, but Tatiev could be an upset.
For Irina's happiness, at least here, you know, the next few moves are captures. So
that's true.
She'll
get the increment. That's right. Her moves are going to be easy. But that really had us on the edge of the seat for a minute, didn't it? Right, down to 5 seconds.
And both players playing very well, finding the correct moves.
Absolutely.
Under deep time pressure.
Yeah.
Like it would have been easy, I think. Irina used her time well not to fall into those Queen C5, Queen F8 things. Right,
but I'm sure Irina's going to be disappointed that she gave these marvelous options to Tatiev, which she did find. You know, applause, kudos to Tatiev for her fine play, but boy, Irina's going to be upset with herself because she's on the difficult side. Yes, that's
now
what I mean to say.
Suffer.
That's right.
So you think it's clear that keeping the rooks on the board rather than you think Tatiev is going to consider taking on a G5 and taking on a B5?
Oh, I'm sorry. Tatiev can get into an ending where she could be just a pawn to the good in this case.
Exactly.
Just a second. So we're back here. So we know the move Rook G5 was forced. I just thought...
Rook G5 is on the board.
Okay,
now
Rook
Tatiev's thinking about her options.
Because you're right. She could simply go into this ending one pawn ahead. I suspect that's closer to a draw than anything.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would want to keep.
You would want to keep the action on and play rook to H7 check.
And just to force my opponent into some kind of passive play, because again, these rooks on the 7th. It's easy enough for the computer to say, yeah, black's got great defense and everything else, but playing against the rooks on the 7th is very, very frightening for a human player.
That's right.
It's very easy to see ghost threats and to error.
Well, one thing's for sure, the absurdity of the time pressure is calming down. So, Maurice, you got something for us in another game.
Indeed, it looks as though while Irina is in trouble, her main rival, Anna Zatonski, is about to win the game by force. You take a look at this position. She actually played not the most accurate move, but it's not going to matter. Here, we saw this position after B takes A5 on the board. White played the move H4, and it looks like they're moving ahead of us. Let me just take this off so that I can show you what happened in the game. In this position, after B takes A5, H4 in pressure by the youngster, the 13-year-old, queen to D1, posting deep into the white position. Bishop to C4 was played, and then the move A4. Bishop to C4 was a serious error. She should have played A4 herself, but she allowed A4 on the board, Bishop B5, and that was a blunder of her piece, although the move A3 was even stronger than that one. After king takes, this rook could have flushed into the game, and after the king moves, the king is just under terrific attack. Another rook check is going to happen here, and the king, this piece will be won by force, but with the king all the way down the board, that can't be good. But instead of that, the simple move after bishop b5 was just to play queen to b1 check, and after king to a3, queen takes on b5, up a piece. No reason to make any moves here for Seirawan. So it looks like the youngster is going to go down in this game, and Anna Zatonski is going to rise and at least be tied with Irina if Irina does not lose her game, which actually could flip-flop them in the championships. Back to you guys.
That's right, Maurice, and we do have an official result. Shamkland has drawn first blood of Lenderman.
Right.
And now the championship is anyone's game. This is absolutely incredible. Anyone can win.
Dramatic events here in round 6. I was going to say that it looked to me that Sam was cruising to victory. The a4 pawn was falling. He had been a pawn up for some time, ever since Lenderman got into trouble, let's just face it, out of the opening. Sam had a very easy opening, put pressure, won a pawn, and now in the final position, 2 connected pass pawns for black. Sam's just about to play the move rook d7, keeping his king nice and solid. Even this knight on e7 makes a bad impression. And then the next thing you know, these pawns are rolling. So Lenderman gave it up. First loss, Sam.
But the crazy thing is, Lenderman still might be leading the tournament.
Well, he started the tournament, started the round
with
a full point ahead.
Yeah, and of course, Onishuk and Kamsky have drawn their game, so they only have 3.5. Sam Shanklin, like Ray Robson, is making an even score after this victory.
Right.
So we have to see whether Gureyev will win his game or if Kopian wins his game. But otherwise, Lenderman could still be in the clear lead after this loss. So plenty of excitement.
Right. Gotcha.
And we do have Sam Shanklin, and he's getting set up with his interview with Grandmaster Maurice Ashley. Here they are.
Yes, with Grandmaster Sam Shanklin after a victory against what looked like the runaway tournament leader, Alex Lenderman. First of all, congratulations on your win.
Thank you.
How did you feel? At what point did you feel like this game is mine? Like you could just see that the win was coming?
Last night when it started raining, I realized that would knock the pollen out of the air and I wouldn't have allergies, so I thought I would be on much better form than I played in the previous rounds. No, but in all seriousness, the opening he played, I think it's been played before, and I don't think Black has played the best way. I think the theory regards it as slightly better for White, and I think that's completely wrong. And so very quickly, I think he just got an unpleasant position, and I think he just didn't react very well to his Queen's Gambit decline, which must be a huge surprise for him, but I've seen the kind of surprises he's been pulling on other people, and the quality of his target-specific preparation has been extremely impressive, so I wanted to dodge any of that and play something solid.
So you just got out of his theory because you played something different yourself?
Yeah, I dodged any surprise he could possibly throw. I wasn't anticipating him to be worse by move 10, but you know, I just thought I should play solid and play a long game, and okay, I think when he played Rook D1, every single game has gone Bishop G3, and I know the computer says if White doesn't play it, he's worse, but I didn't actually analyze any other moves, so I had to find it over the board. But knowing I was better and having some time advantage, and historically I've done well against Lenderman, I was pretty confident.
You have a good record against him. I believe it's 2 wins and 2 draws out of 4 games, or
no,
am I thinking about somebody else?
I must have beaten Lenderman 6 times by now.
Oh.
No, he's. It's funny when when Nakamura and Caruana declined their invitations, and the next spots went to Ramirez and Lenderman. I'm like, yep, there's 1 win, 1 loss for me, just based on history. But
wow.
No, I mean Alex is playing amazing chess this tournament, but yeah, he had a bad day today. But I'm sure he'll be back with vigor tomorrow.
Well, he's got a tough road to go with Kamsky and Onishuk with the black
double
pieces.
Black, yeah.
Back to back. Who do you play tomorrow?
Narodetsky.
And what's your record against him?
Oh, we actually haven't played in a very long time. I used to demolish him like 10-0 when we were kids, but he actually won the most recent game, which is probably the most relevant. So I don't know. I don't think past history will really have an effect on, I don't know. I think we're 2 completely new players now. So
it's a new tournament for you, a great victory.
Yeah,
you must be feeling pretty good.
The first half was really tough for me. I felt like I was both playing poorly and catching bad breaks, and yeah, today everything just turned around, and all of a sudden I'm back to an even score. I've played all the top guys. I still have the lowest 3 rated players left to play, and I have 3 whites in the last 5 games. So I don't know. I think things are turning around.
Well, that about sums it up. Congratulations and good luck in the rest of your games.
Thanks much.
Grandmaster Sam Shanklin shaking up the leaderboard by defeating Grandmaster Alex Lenderman. It's anybody's tournament now.
Wow. Shake up indeed. That
Playing
was
the spoiler.
Very, very dramatic. Well, Sam's looking for more than just being a spoiler. He wants to get on that podium in the last 5 rounds.
Sure, with an even score now, and
having played
the top score being 4 out of 6.
Right, and
Lenderman having a lot of tough pairings. I mean, we might not see a very big score win this championship, but that means anyone's in it.
And that's perfect, by the way, for Alex Onishuk, because we know he's such a difficult player to beat. Alex Onishuk is looking at a +2, +3 result. If he can get to +3, I'm sure at this moment in time, he's a favorite to be a playoff if he can get to +3. But a big, big, big victory today for Sam Shanklin. No question.
Now, can anyone catch up to Lenderman despite the fact that he lost? The only 2 players who could do it would be Akobian or Gureyev. So Akobian playing Ramirez in this position where he has 2 bishops. I'm guessing he'll like Vara's game, but is it enough?
Is it enough?
To play for the win? It looks pretty pleasant.
This is a very nice squeeze, by the way, the
Yeah.
position I have on the board. White's king, nicely centralized, but it's really about these two bishops raking the across the center and over to the king side as well.
And two nice rooks as well, just great pieces by White in general.
Yes.
So definitely some chances for Varouche Jacobian to catch the leaders, and such a great personality Var has. But yesterday when we joked that he might draw all his games, wait a second, he might win 2 in a row.
Right, right. He didn't like your comment. He's punishing you for such a suggestion.
Well, he's actually rewarding us because this is exciting,
Right.
making the game exciting. And we actually have another guest. So Alexander Lenderman's getting set up for an interview, gracefully coming down after a difficult loss. And
we thank him and appreciate his sportsmanship in doing that, because it's always tough, especially in a tournament that he's been playing so well, and looking forward to a good result in this round before he plays the two beasts with the black pieces. Maurice.
Thanks, Yaz. With Grandmaster Alex Lindemann after losing to Sam Shanklin. Alex, when did you realize that there were difficulties in this game?
I'm trying to remember. I think after he played bishop a4, and then the idea was to take on d5, and I couldn't really defend the c3 very conveniently. That just caught me by surprise. I thought I'm fine, relatively equal, maybe chances to press in the endgame with 2 bishops if I get a chance. But in those dynamic chances, I knew there might be some, but I didn't see them. But it turned out that they were there, and he played a fantastic game, I thought.
Indeed, he did. He said he thought he caught you by surprise in the opening, did he?
Absolutely, yeah. I expected the Grunfeld, maybe the Slav, but this particular order, d4, d5, c4, e6, that's something I was actually trying to avoid against Ray Robson. That's why I played c4, and Sam never played exactly like that. And so I was not sure already what to play on move 3, and then the classical line, I played what I was going to play against Gareev against that, but it turned out I didn't know it deeply enough, and the position had some dangers, to say the least, and it looks like he navigated through them very well. I don't know what the computer says, but I did the best I could. I battled, but I guess sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes you just have to accept losing and move on for the next one.
Indeed. Your road gets tougher now. You get black against both Kamsky and Onischuk.
Not necessarily, because today's game was very tough, and I had a couple of very tough games early on. I mean, every game was tough, so I wouldn't necessarily say just because of the names that the games would necessarily definitely get tougher, because I'll tell you what, today was very tough, so I don't know if it can get tougher than this.
Indeed.
So I'm not too worried.
We appreciate your graciousness coming down to join us. Good luck in the rest of your games.
Thank you.
Grandmaster Alex Lindemann, seems like he still might be in the lead, at least tied for the lead, guys, going forward in the championships. Back to you guys.
And just the guy to not let it get to him that that lead is kind of achieved in a strange way, right?
Right.
With a lot of decisive results, not a couple wins and a few draws.
Mm-hmm.
So you were assessing the size of Jacobian's advantage here. Definitely has an edge. Big enough for a win, or do you predict a draw?
Big enough for a win.
All right,
Big
so
enough for a win.
you think that Jacobian has got
Is an odds-on favorite of tying for first after the end of this round. I think that what he's going to do is going to play a move like f4, f5. It might seem a little bit anti-positional, but what he's really doing is keeping this knight on f8 squeezed. After f4, f5, the idea would be to play king e3, f4, followed by e5, e4, e5, just opening up the position for the two bishops. If White is able to target that g7 pawn, that's going to be all she wrote.
That's right. Yeah, it looks really nice, doesn't it?
It does.
Beautiful. Beautiful bishops. Now,
Wonderful coordination, yeah.
Our game, Josh Friedel Gareev, remember that was the famous hippopotamus, and we had a little backgoring, and I had to tell you, Yasser, you owe me a couple sushi rolls.
Oh no! The dark square bishops are still on the board.
Exactly, the dark square bishops are on the board, and, well, it was a knight for a bishop. I feel like that's a win. Right?
Okay.
What,
Okay.
half a sushi roll?
No, you get the whole thing. But we'll share, because we're buddies.
Right, okay, well, so anyway, eventually we got this position. So black's got the two bishops, but white has a better pawn structure. Do you think it's balanced? Do you think we're going to see a draw here?
Well,
By the way, if I may jump in, I bet a pawn trade. And that's what happened first.
Hey, but that bet
So,
wasn't booked.
I want.
Yeah.
What was the bet? What do I get? I'm not getting a sushi roll.
No, man, you get the check. You get the check. Maurice, obviously, you're welcome too, but you just gotta bring the wallet, bring the plastic. Let's
He
see.
gets the dragon roll, and I get like one of
I
those.
never get anything in this, man. I'm always the last to get stuff. Nobody thinks about me, but at least I got the pawn trade. I'm feeling good about myself.
Okay, well, let's see really what did happen, because who got what trade when and where.
Well, you know that they say,
and
then
Maurice pawn trade right away.
Maurice is running a tournament in Vegas. You know what they say? Always bet on pawn. Is that right? Always bet on pawns.
On pawns.
I actually made a roulette chess wheel, and there are a lot more pawns than there are any other piece, so it's basically a safe bet.
We played, and you beat me.
Yeah.
Yes, we were
Right,
playing roulette chess at the Hall of Fame. There was an exhibition.
Right, that's right. We were playing with the roulette chess wheel, which is a combination of chess and chance, because even if you had this nice little positional edge against me, you might just attack your queen, and you don't spin a queen. I take your queen. There you go.
There you go. And we got this position.
And it looks like something might have happened in our big matchup in the women's championship. I'm predicting a draw. It looks like they
does look like the two kings are in the middle of the board. So it does look like Irina did save what was an awkward position.
Right. I think what happened there was Chatsev, instead of going for your line, went for the pawn up line, and Irina very well prepared in both the opening and the end game, and probably just knew the theory of how to draw that, and
I see.
So wasn't able to.
Well, we'll come back to that in a second. We just take a quick meander at the game between Josh Friedel and Timur Gariev, because that, of course, is a key game.
Yes, right. We were just talking about that.
Yes, and again, these split pawns on the c7 and a6 squares are a hindrance in Black's position, but he does have the two Bs. I would expect him to play a move like, oops, I'm sorry, White might play a move like bishop f2, well, f6, hold on. No, maybe, just a second, maybe I'm evaluating this wrong altogether. Oops.
Well, now it's pretty equal. I think White's a lot better.
So bishop e7. I'm beginning to think maybe, just maybe, after bishop f2, Josh is very, very fast, and it's not easy at all, and maybe he stands a little bit better.
Because you just think about this occupation of c5.
Exactly.
Yeah, we could play. We could play bishop b5.
Right. If bishop b5, I was just trying to assess this bishops of opposite color ending. That is a kind of funny one. You don't see a pawn like this every single day on h6. But it is passed. Probably a draw. Okay. But it's just a funny bishops of opposite color ending that I'm looking at for the first time. I don't see Gariev winning this position. Shall we see how Irina held the draw?
Yeah, and I'm assuming that we're going to hear from one or both of the players, so we'll also be able to talk to them about this kind of time pressure. And
wow, that was so close. Wow, that was something special. We'll go back a few moves, because I was saying that I thought Zenyuk should keep the rooks, and after the move rook g5, she saw a pawn. Why not? She captured and said, I'm a pawn up, I can't lose, maybe I can win. But Irina did the normal routine. Rooks belong behind passed pawns. And furthermore, she got a very active king. I like this active king for the defense. The king is walking in, and I don't see any winning chances here. And b7, a draw was offered. I assume the draw was offered because after a move like f5, White is going to be unable to make progress. White should be careful not to step back and allow king g3 with serious threats of checkmate, I would say.
Right, so this is just a draw. The rook can't escape. The black pawn on f5 is doing a good job of blocking the king on f4 from checks. And
yeah, I would say it's just going to get to king and 2 versus king and 2 in a very short order. But I look forward to the ladies' Abrahamian and Crush sharing their thoughts, because it was drama.
Right, and we've got Ashley with some thoughts on the dramatic game Akobian Ramirez, where you think that Akobian's going to steamroll him.
Yes.
Well, I just saw a move that makes me feel warm inside. It's the kind of thing you have good memories about, and that is in the game between Akobian and Ramirez. You see this position, he's got these two pawns. It looks like sooner or later he's going to be able to push the pawn to e5, create a passed pawn in the position, but he played a different move that when I first saw this kind of move, I was like, what? And then it's like, wow. The move f5. Now he has a backward pawn on the e-file, so you think this had to be a bad move. In fact, it's the best move in the position. This move controls the knight. It's not able to go to g6. It's not able to go to e6. It's not able to go to d7 already. And once that knight is shut out of the game, now it's what can White's other pieces do? He has the two bishops. This reminds me of a game that Lasker beat Capablanca back in the early 1900s in a Ruy Lopez. Imagine an idea in the Ruy Lopez crossing over into this, which was a Slav opening. So you get this position where the pawn's sitting on f5. Ramirez played the move rook to e7, but the computer is just saying, this is dominant. We're up a piece. Let's start trading pieces off. Rook to d8 is the toughest move to deal with in this position. This bishop is just floating. The black pieces have no connectivity. That's the main problem in the position. While this king will be able to move, the pawn can push later. This bishop can post on this square on c5. Total command of the position does White have here. And it looks as if Akobian is going to continue to surge in this game. If he wins, he'll tie with Linderman for the lead after just drawing 4 games in a row. If he can win this one, if he can pull it off, he'll be tied for first. This looks like it will happen, but still a long way to go in this position. Guys?
Nice. I am, in fact, expecting f5 and king f4 and e5 as well. And it just looks roses, as you say, for White. Let's see, whatever
We also have an
happened.
official result in Seirawan and Zitansky. Zitansky has won that game.
Mm-hmm. As expected, she was winning a bishop.
So now she's joining Irina Krush in the leaderboard.
Right, and I'm just looking at the game between Camilla and Malakina, and I'm wondering in this position between Camilla, if White doesn't have has Malakina missed a shot here? Her last move was d4, d3. Looks like a wonderful cementing move. You protect the rook, but I'm just wondering, is the move knight e5 available for White? Because there's attacking Black's queen. I'm anticipating queen e4, right? Do you see a better move than queen e4? And then I wanted to take the pawn, and I'm sure rook d2 was the intended move, but attacking the queen, attacking the knight, and maybe her analysis stopped here without her considering the move queen a1 check, bishop attacks queen, knight capture c5, grabbing another pawn, and I think Camilla can confidently keep capturing Black's pawns.
Because if we attack the knight, like with queen c6 or something like that?
Then I simply move my queen to the defense of the knight, and I'm 1, 2, 3 pawns to the good.
All right, well, looks like there could be some potential trouble here for Malakina. But meanwhile, we've got Tatev Abrahamian from the U.S. Women's Chess Championship, who just drew against Irina Krush in a game that looked like it was getting pretty heated in time pressure, and both players finding a lot of good moves with very little time in their clock.
They did indeed.
She's with Maurice Ashley.
Indeed, Jen, with Tatev Abrahamian after a terrific fight with the tournament leader welcome to the show, first of all.
Thank you.
What was it like? I mean, you guys were in time pressure for, it seemed like 14 moves or so. Were you ever worried that you were going to lose because of the clock, or that you might be able to push her to make a mistake?
Well, I mean, she was getting really low on time, so I thought maybe she could make a mistake somewhere, but she kept finding good moves.
She had like 4 seconds maybe at the clock at one point when she moved and got the increment.
Yeah, I think when she went rook d5 at some point, she had really low on time. And I think the final move too, maybe she was really low on time.
All the time in that game. Did you feel like you had an advantage at any point during the game?
I mean, the position was really tactical, but I think just structurally my position maybe is worse because of my a2 and b4 pawns. But there were so many tactics, and my knight on c6, I thought maybe I have something, but I guess she just found all the good moves.
So this struggle, you have played her before. The score is sort of lopsided, but you've defeated her before. Did you feel that you had to go for it this game? Like, no matter what, the tournament is now at its midpoint to try to beat her?
No, I just kind of wanted to play solid and take my chances as they come.
So what's the situation now? I mean, a draw keeps you, is it a point behind her in the tournament?
I think so. I think point behind her and Anna maybe.
And you have played Anna already, so the rest of the field, sort of the lower end of the field for you, what do you think about your chances moving forward?
I mean, it's just one game at a time. I think this tournament is more level than it used to be. It's not just Anna and Irina just winning all their games against everyone, so they've drawn a couple of games. So I think it's just going to be, every game is going to be fight for all three of us.
Indeed. Well, thanks so much for joining us, and good luck in the rest of your games.
Thank you.
Tatev Abrahamian, after nicking the tournament leader a little bit, slowing her down, we wish her the best in the rest of the games. Back to you guys.
If I can't just get in one quick question about when the 4-rook position and the rook g5, whether there was consideration for keeping the rooks on the 7th.
But my g2 pawn is hanging.
Go ahead, put the position up on the board.
Here? Like rook h7 and rook c7?
Yes.
Well, I thought the rook goes on a8, and yeah, I guess that's better.
Let's show that line.
Oh, and maybe knight.
Plus no variation.
Oh yeah, I thought about this.
Move, rook over.
We thought
rook
that you might try
And then
to
rook
squeeze
c5?
a little here. The 2 rooks on the 7th are always very frightening for for everybody.
This was in a moment, move 36 as well. I mean,
Yeah.
you did grab the pawn when you had a chance, so that has to be a consideration, the clock.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I would have more chances with the 3 again. I didn't realize her king was going to get so active. I thought maybe I'll have some chances because, I don't know. Yeah, here, I mean, I don't see how to continue here, though. Maybe do I have rook c5? Am I winning a pawn?
Well, the computer is not that impressed by rook c5, so
Okay.
it doesn't look like much, and you certainly had a pawn in hand. So we'll see how she does
maybe.
in the rest of her games. She got a chance to look at that later, of course, and we'll look to the rest of the rounds. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Maurice.
All right, well,
what games are remaining? I think they're dropping like flies here. A lot of
yeah,
results.
that's what happens with these games, that it seems like none of them are done, and then all of them are done, right?
Exactly.
But we do have a couple of critical games still going on. We talked about Akobian and his advantage against Ramirez,
Right.
which
Gardiev.
just seems so picturesque. And then Fridel Gareev, most likely a draw, but you like Fridel's chances a little bit more. And then Zitansky's
draw.
won her game.
Yes.
And we've got a few games left in the women's championship.
Okay.
Sabina Foiser and Irina Zenyuk, Nia Nemkova, and Bahanskaiti Melakina, they're all still fighting.
I see. Very good.
And I think you just took a look at Bahanskaiti Melakina, and you were pointing out the move knight to e5, and indeed that move was played.
Right.
So Camilla has played knight e5.
Well, I'm an old pawn grubber, you know. Give me a chance to grab a pawn and I'm a happy camper. And I just, I'm very sensitive to the little darlings. And I saw that there was a fork in the position thanks to the pin
That's right.
against the rook and the queen.
And quite a pawn to win. And she only has half a point. So this would mean a lot to her to get into the scoreboard. Strong player, and certainly doesn't want to be
A great veteran of women's tournaments. I've watched Camilla, gosh, it's really been terribly long, I think close to 20 years that she's competed, and competed very well. Terrible start in this event. Lots of things went wrong. Losing to our 13-year-old, didn't help. That game swung on a single move in the, remember, the 4 queens position.
That's right.
Who will forget that? But we have our defending champion in studio.
That's right, Irina Krush and Maurice Ashley.
With Grandmaster Irina Krush. First of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Maurice.
Terrific draw, huge fight in this game.
Was that exciting enough for you?
That was pretty exciting. We definitely enjoyed the struggle and the time pressure. At one point, you had something like 4 seconds left on your clock. You had to make a move to get the increment to move forward. I mean, you must have, your heart must have been beating super fast. You're making a joke, of course, since I hate increments.
Yes.
But tell us about the game. Did you think you were fine coming out of the opening?
Yeah, I thought I had a very comfortable position coming out of the opening. I couldn't really have hoped for anything better. Solid positional game. I thought Black has, obviously some ways to get a strategic advantage. There are things that White wants to avoid, like getting stuck with that bad light squared bishop. So I was pretty happy, but I cannot say I played that great. I mean, well, I never really managed to become actually better. I thought White was always, doing fine. I even felt like I was under some pressure around, like this point right here, a little bit, yeah. Computer agrees, not much, nothing too special. It was always sort of petering out into a draw, but I would have hoped to get a position where I'm the one trying to win, yes. And this was really a critical moment right here, Queen C5. Well, actually, I kind of thought that maybe Tezhev had blundered this move, rook to D2, and that D5 pawn, I guess probably not. Maybe she saw that she has some resources here. And after Queen C5, it was just so sharp. And like, for example, we can show a couple of lines. There's the move, like it's a Queen D5 here. Queen D5, and there's Queen F8 check, Queen G8, and Rook takes F6. Look at that. There's pins everywhere.
This must have been scary to see at the board.
Oh, yeah. And now I see Rook H6 is actually a threat to even win the game. And if I trade queens, my G7 pawn is just going to be defenseless. So it's kind of funny, both of us have an attack on the G pawns, but her attack is good and mine is not because
of the difference of the rook on G3.
Yeah. So I mean, there was a lot of unpleasant lines here. Another one is I could capture the pawn with the rook. Now Queen F8. There's actually a nice line here. King H7 and Rook F6. Yeah, this looked just awful for Black because then I noticed this Rook H6 is a mate threat.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't even have time to get my rooks to the first rank to threaten her king. Okay, yeah, the computer says there's one move exactly. I need to defend the H6 pawn, but obviously this is a hard move to sort of see in your calculations, and this doesn't look appealing at all for Black.
Looks scary, in fact. Actually, that's a funny position you just pointed out because it looks like Rook F7 if you don't notice it is crazy, but suddenly you have Rook takes H3 and the Rook can't leave because you're the one who's mating. So that would just be too wild to be looking at all those crazy ideas in a position.
Yeah.
So did you feel like fortunate to get out of it alive at the end?
Absolutely.